Hello and welcome to today's video. So this time we're taking our fourth look at book series, both vintage and modern, that you might fancy collecting. So without further ado, sit back, relax, and let's get to it. Okay then, so the first series we're looking at today is Classic Star Trek, and I've pulled out a little selection of the classic Star Trek books. Now, this is very much the original series, Kirk, Spock, Scotty, and the original crew, rather than the Next Gen or Deep Space Nine and beyond. This is just the books related to the original classic series, the 60s series. Now, this was the very first ever Star Trek book, the Whitman TV hardback, Mission to Horatius, I think is how you pronounce it. It's quite difficult to find in original first edition, but in the late 90s, Pocket Books did publish an exact facsimile. I think it was about 1996, 97 that one came out. This is the original, though, from 1968. And quite a scarce little book. It's sort of aimed at sort of young adults, I would say, and got a couple of pictures inside as well. But like all the big little books, they've sort of come of their age now, and many of these are 50, almost 60 years old. So if you ever come across them, the Whitman ones, quite hard to find in Britain because they were an American publisher on the whole. But if you do see them, they're worth sort of picking up. But it wasn't long before SF author James Blish came along, and he was tasked by Bantam Books here to adapt all the original Star Trek episodes, and in the end he did the whole lot, over 12 books. The last one was finished by his wife, because that was sort of the early, about 1974, 75, and he passed away by then, and his wife sort of finished it off. But this was the very first one. I think this book is almost iconic. I think it's fantastic. It's none of these are difficult to find. These Bantam books, I think they had huge runs, huge print runs on them, and they're really good. You can just dip in and out. Yeah, January 67. And I sort of remember reading these, the British editions in the 70s, published by Corgi, and it was a way to sort of relive those original TV shows. And if it was an episode that I perhaps hadn't remembered, or one that I hadn't seen, it was even better. But yeah, so as I said, they did 12 of those there. That was the first one, and then they're all numbered going forward. So a great series. Also for Star Trek, you had 12 versions of this, which was the photo novels. This is a Corgi one. I haven't got the Bantam edition for the rest of for number one, but the rest of them I have. And as I said, there's 12 in total. All the episodes are classic, and this is perhaps one of my all-time favourite ones, City on the Edge of Forever. And this is the original TV episode in photo novel form here. Just superb. I absolutely love these, and this one in particular was just stunning. Really fantastic. There's Harlan Ellison there. He wrote this original one. And as I said, only 12 to get. They're all pretty easy to find, about £5 a copy if they're really mint. Yeah, they're often found in sets, in actual fact. Now, the other thing Alan Dean Foster did, he did a series of 10 books, which was the Star Trek logs. And that's what these ones are. So these adapt the animated TV series that came in the early 1970s. Every single episode again. My copy of number one's not the greatest, but it is a first printing. And there's number two there. But as I said, there's 10 of those to get your hands on. Now, there was a whole raft of non-fiction books about Star Trek rather than stories, a whole wave of them in the 1970s and early 80s. I've only brought down just a touch of them here, but there's another one there, Star Trek Lives. There was also original Star Trek fiction, which started as well by Bantam. So not adaptations, these were brand new books, and ironically, and I think quite funny really, but back in the 70s, the bigger star of these books was actually Mr. Spock rather than Captain Kirk. So a lot of the books are very Spock-centric, shall we say. Here's one there, Spock Messiah. And there's something about these books. It was an age when, there was a bit more innocence, and they weren't strictly canon. And these authors came to the series, and they just put their own sort of spin to it. And some of them are very much better than others. But when Star Trek got revived for the Star Trek the Motion Picture, the license moved over to Pocket Books, which is the ones we got here. And this was the Pocket Book Star Trek number one. It was the adaptation of the very first Star Trek novel. And here it is here, and it's fantastic and really good. This is, I believe, quite tough to find in its original printing, because it was a huge seller, this one. Here we are, December 79. And then pocketbooks themselves, they had a science fiction imprint which was called Timescape, and they published a few interesting books, a couple by Philip K. Dick that were published in these early Timescape brand, and they've got this little Timescape banner. So that was book number 1, Vonda and McIntyre's book number 2, The Klingon Gambit, and number 3 here, Covenant of the Crown. And these early Timescape ones, you could look those up and you can find these, and I always loved them in their first printing. Some beautiful artwork on these as well. Now this series went to, I think it was about number 94, something like that, and they're all fully numbered. And then there's a few sub-series which are like mini-series, a bit like the comics. So if you just stick to classic Star Trek alone, with all the spin-off books and movie adaptations, you are probably looking at about 2 to 230 paperbacks, so it's no mean feat. I have pretty much, well, in fact I've got them all now, and I've covered them on my channel in a series of original Star Trek videos, and I've just sort of dipped my toe into starting to cover the early Next Generation books as well. So like all the videos that you'll see here, if I've covered them individually, I will point to those videos in the description down below, so you can go and check them out in a bit more detail. So the next series we're looking at is Hutchinson's A Century Of. Now these started in the early 1930s, about 1932, and they ran up to the outbreak of the Second World War in the UK, so about 1937, and then unfortunately paper rationing kicked in, and these massive tomes sadly died a death, but I absolutely love them. There's just over 30 in the series, and it took me 2 years to track them all down. Now originally, they did all come with dust wrappers, so I've only got one in the dust wrapper, which is this one here, which is the second Century of Humour. But you can see there's some of the other titles on the back there. Really terrific series, this. And basically what they are, they're anthologies. So these are anthologies, huge omnibuses of different writers. This one's got obviously humorous stories, and you'll find all manner of great authors listed in here. You can see highly accessible, lots of different authors here, lots of names you'll recognize from this sort of period. And yeah, most of the books tap out at least 1,000 pages. So I brought down a few to show you here, but as I said, I did cover these in a couple of dedicated videos, but I have got the whole lot now. So that was the humor one. This is A Century of Horror, edited by none other than Dennis Wheatley. And they did a few. There's like horror, strange stories, creepy stories, and ghost stories. And all of the ones which are sort of focusing on the supernatural are ones that go for the biggest sort of money. This one, someone's put in brackets in 1935 for when this one came out. Edited by Dennis Wheatley, no less. Here we are. And he always had that fascination, didn't he, with the occult. This is a 6 or 7 page introduction by Dennis Wheatley. And then you've got the little list here. This one's got a few underlines, but this has got some great stuff. And in fact, it's got the Wheatley story, The Snake, in it. Once again, another 1,000 pager. And they've got these, even if you don't have them in wrapper, I like them for the sort of the illustrated boards here. I think they're really good at a dagger going through the hand, dripping blood. So that's a couple. I brought down 5 to show you, give you a little selection. This one's A Century of Spy Stories, once again edited by Dennis Wheatley. And that's his other great thing. He was a great thriller writer as well, wasn't he? And a lot of these I've picked up for literally just a few pounds. Literally £5, something like that. Whereas the most expensive ones, I think to get the very last one I needed, which I believe was Creepy Stories Volume 2, I think I paid about 35 for that one. So, they're not all dirt cheap. Really nice copies, like that horror one there in a dust wrapper, I've seen for as much as £300. So, they do vary quite a bit in price. But yeah, this one's Spy Stories here. Got a few recognisable names there, as you can see. Peter Cheney there as well. And this is actually one of the slightly shorter ones. It comes in about 830 pages for that one. This is another one of the more sought after ones. And you can sort of see why, A Century of Ghost Stories. It's just a really good subject, and that's why these tend to go for good money. This one's got a little bit of amateur repair, done by myself in actual fact. It's one of the scarcer ones to find. There's Sheridan Le Fanu there, M.R. James. And I'm not too worried about the condition of these. I just wanted them solely to read. So this has got a big, huge volume, this one. Yeah, just under 1,000 pages on that one. This one here is excellent. This is 1001 Wonderful Things, all part of the same series. You can see it's the same format. But this one it's so heavy you wouldn't believe it. And you'll see why, because it's got photographs on virtually every page of wonders of the world and architecture and things like that. So you can see why it's so heavy. It's absolutely fascinating, this, to see what was regarded as something quite special in the 1930s. Incredible, eh? Another great one. I got just one more to show you. This is one of those ones which is the Century of Creepy Stories. Once again, these are the scarce ones. And this is an absolutely enormous tome. Yeah, this is almost 1,200 pages. But it's the people inside that will attract you. Just great names here. All the classics are there. H.G. Wells. Brilliant, eh? 3 by Edgar Allan Poe. M.R. James, Walter de la Mare. Some good stuff there, eh? And just one other. Since I filmed the 2 videos that I did on this series in detail, I've since found one other book which you could class as almost like not a spin-off, but I guess what happened is, by this time, by the end of, the start of the war, Hutchinson had started publishing their own line of paperbacks, and because the hardbacks had become a bit too expensive to produce, I think they tried to launch the series in this softback here. So this is A Century of, same series. This is A Century of Entertainment. This is in its scarce wrapper, but there you are. And this is like puzzles, and it's a potpourri of bits of all the Century of books, including some puzzles and party games and short stories. It is general entertainment. It's definitely part of the same series, A Century of. I said A Century of, and not one that you would often see. I think it's quite scarce, that one. But if you collect the Century of hardbacks, it's one to keep your eyes peeled for. But this is a great fun, and on the whole, quite a cheap series to collect when you consider these are 90+ years old now. So if you've watched any of the previous videos, I do like to include a series which is, bang up to date and is being published today. And that is this series here, which is like the British Library Crime Classics. So this is almost like a companion volume. And then I've got a few volumes just in the normal series. So they've just published their 100th book. And this is an example of one of them. Now these are books which have gone into obscurity. So many were published in the 30s, 40s, 50s, and even early 60s, and they've fallen out of the public eye, or they've just become forgotten. And Martin Edwards, who is the editor of this series, absolute expert on classic crime, he is rediscovering these books for a new audience, and the packaging is just fantastic. They put, I wouldn't say, I hate to use the term cozy crime because it's not quite that, but they do put sort of a period illustration on the front of these jackets, and I think they are very attractive indeed. This was the 100th one, in fact, Death of a Bookseller, and this one here is Murder by the Book, which is a little anthology of books or related mysteries. And this one here, I initially thought it was actually like a little summary of all the first 100 books that have been published by the British Library, but it's not. It's just to look at the genre in general, although some of the books that have been reprinted are featured in here. So I'll put a little link up to the British Library website, which is where I bought these. I bought them in January, and they were having a January sale, so I was able to pick them up. They were on a 3 for 2, which was fantastic, and the story of classic crime in 100 books was only £5.50, which I thought was a very good price for this. So head on over to the British Library website. They do also a companion series of classic SF, so there's a bit there for you to have a look at. And as a modern series, if you keep your eyes peeled, you pick up a few at bargain prices, and you may not want them all, but there's certainly enough there for you to definitely take a look at if crime is your thing. Now, this next series is Mad. So I'm sure everyone in their lifetime has come across the Mad magazine, Mad Paperbacks. It was originally a comic, of course, and created by William M. Games. And basically, the magazine found that they could recycle a lot of their content and put it into paperbacks. And boy, oh boy, what a successful series it was. Now, I've probably got about 70 original Mad paperbacks, and all mine pretty much are original printings. Some of them have got, like this, they've got a UK import sticker. Some of them are just the original American printings. Some of them are actually British only printings, which have actually been printed over here, or at least the covers have. There's about 150 to get. There's loads of variations, different coloured covers with different artwork on. There's box sets, there's all sorts. So I have done like a little dedicated video of my collection. But the Mad paperbacks, if you just want to get one of each, you can find them quite often in like job lots on eBay. So that tends to be how I buy them, if they're cheap and cheerful. And they're just the perfect book to sort of, shall we say, take into the little boys' room with you. And that's certainly what people have done with these over the years, I believe. Sergio Aragonés, one of my all-time favourite, in fact he is my favourite Mad illustrator. He did the comic series Gru as well. He did Mad Marginals, which is a very, very distinctive style. I believe there's about 8 Aragonés books, so he's my favourite standalone artist. Here's one of the very early ones here, Son of Mad, William Games. I said some of these were, this is actually a third from November 1960. First came out October 59, so that's a really early one there, not a first printing. Also, the key artists, like Aragonés, here's Dave Berg, would have a whole series of their own work pulled together. So this is Mad's Dave Berg Looks at Modern Thinking. That's all Dave Berg artwork. My other all-time favourite series is Spy vs. Spy. Absolutely love this. And this is an example of a British one with a British 3 shillings and 6 actually printed straight onto the cover, even though I believe the book was printed in the States at the time, a bit like an American edition of a British comic. Yeah, look, November 1965, that one. And there's a few more to look at here. We got Mad's Don Martin Bounces Back, another one of the Mad artists. Al Jaffe, famous one there, Al Jaffe Fouls His Net. And it's just, that artist's work. They were like Mad staffers in effect, and they've just pulled all their work together into their own paperbacks. Another early one here, Like Mad. Kelly Freya's cover there. And the last one I looked at is a World Mad. Take on It's a Mad World, of course, with that gorgeous wraparound jacket. Look at that one there. There's a lot to enjoy in the Mad books, and I suppose they're only going to appeal to people of a certain age, and you do sort of need to know a bit of American culture to fully appreciate them. They weren't ever really British editions per se. They were covering what was happening in American films, comics, popular culture at that time. I think they are historical artifacts. They're really easy to get hold of, particularly if you're not too fussed about having first or early editions, and they're pretty cheap as well. And as I said, there's a good 150. You can easily find a checklist online of the whole lot, and they are good fun to collect. So the last series we're covering today is Four Square Books. Now, this is a classic publisher, and I collect their entire output. Now, this is the very first Four Square book, number 1, and they are all numbered until the introduction of ISBNs. And Four Square, they sort of changed their sort of cover style and artwork over the years, but then in the late 60s they morph into New England Library Nell books, and that's what Four Square become. So this is the very first one here from 1957, and a lot of the cover art was done by Mortelmans. So here's the first one. Here's number 2 as well, a Simonon, the Brothers Rico. And then I just thought I'd bring down a few of my favourite of the earlier ones. I'll cover the New English Library books in a separate one, because there are people who just collect New English Library. So here's number 10, Birdman of Alcatraz. I absolutely love this book. It's a really great true crime book, Thomas Gaddis, and this has got a signed Mortelmans cover. Very, very nice, that one. This is one of the easier ones to find. This is number 83, Lucky Jim. I've had multiple copies through my hands. This is a really, really nice one. So it's Kingsley Amis's first book. They did also publish his second book. I like it here. And great stuff. I had to study that when I was at school. Foursquare also reprinted these beautiful editions of the Tarzan books by Edgar Rice Burroughs, and they did the entire lot, and they even did the later Venus novels as well. But these early Tarzan ones, there's a whole run of them, and they are just terrific to collect. Beautiful jackets, as you can see. Let's see when this first one came out. 1959. And it lists a lot of the other books which would all come in time, and they published them all in chronological order as well, which is great. Here's a crime one. So all genres were covered: crime, non-fiction, true crime. There's a couple by Churchill that are published in Foursquare, which are both quite scarce. This is Dorothy Sayers, another great crime author, 5 Red Herrings. This cover always reminds me a little bit of a Pef Pan. It looks like Mortlemans has taken his inspiration from a Pan jacket. Number 186 here, another Tarzan one. Another beautiful jacket there by Mortlemans, Tarzan and the Ant-Men. One of my favourites. 252, another absolutely stonking cover. This one's not by Mortlemans, it's John Pollock. Harley Street Hypnotist. What a beautiful jacket that is, isn't it? Almost like airbrush, but it's not, of course. Yeah, shame it's a wraparound, but shame my copy's got that big crease on, but the front's okay. And I think that's quite a scarce one, that one. This one, 299, is the first British paperback printing of Starship Troopers, the classic by Robert Heinlein. They did actually publish the second, well, it was reprinted by Foursquare with a different number and a different jacket, and that's equally fantastic. But that was the very, very first one, The Mobile Infantry, the best science fiction novel of 1959. 326 here is another subject close to my heart, which is Second World War escape stories, and this is the classic The Tunnel by Eric Williams. And the last one I brought, a Josh Kirby cover. The last one I brought down was number 730, which is a little known John Wyndham title called Jizzle. And this is the one that was published by Foursquare, because Penguin didn't actually have the license to them all. Penguin did all the rest of them in paperback, but Foursquare had the rights to this one. So you don't often see that one. And in fact, like this, because it's a later one, it says a Foursquare book published by the New English Library. And we'll see those in a future video. So there you go. Hope you enjoyed 5 more interesting series that you might want to collect, both vintage and modern. I do love doing these little snapshots of series, and as I said, in the description down below I shall put links to all the dedicated videos on these for you to take a look at if you want to. So thanks very much for watching today. If you've enjoyed it, do please give it the thumbs up. Do please hit that subscribe button for regular vintage paperback content, and I'll look forward to seeing you again very soon. Bye.